Trump has been angry at you for a very long time, over a decade. That's true, thank you. I like that. Do you know who Rosie O'Donnell is? You're better off not knowing Rosie. To be honest, Rosie O'Donnell deserves a raise because she's made roasting Donald Trump her full-time job. Rosie always comes back with more energy than the IRS at his tax return, and their feud has lasted longer than Trump's real estate scams, his marriages, and whatever is left of his natural hairline. A 19-year-old girl was drinking and kissing another girl, and it was on the cover of the Post. So, Trump held a press conference right before The View went live, saying, "I just want you to know, I've forgiven her." I thought, is he the pimp and she's the prostitute? And who is he, the moral arbiter of 20-year-olds? Melania Trump is currently involved in the president and Rosie O'Donnell's never-ending feud. Melania's tweet, "I urge you not to be afraid of failure, as failure will never have the power to define you as long as you learn from it," followed her presentation of the International Women of Courage Awards in Washington. Rosie responded with a sly tweet, "Run away with your parents and son." If dragging him were a sport, Rosie would have a trophy case larger than Trump's ego, well, perhaps not that large. She doesn't just make fun of him, her comebacks are sharper than whatever rusty spray tan machine he uses to make himself look like an expired pumpkin. She burns him with the force of 1,000 bankrupt casinos, and let's be honest, one of the few pleasures in this dismal political environment is seeing Rosie destroy Trump. The man avoids the truth just as he avoids subpoenas, but Rosie's anger cannot be avoided. So, I said some facts that I just found on Wiki, which were easily accessible since this campaign began, that he's gone bankrupt 4 times, got all his money from his father, and notoriously cheats private contractors out of their money. Yes, and that's well documented. Simple facts. So, you said this on The View, and he went crazy. Rosie O'Donnell was holding court on The View, delivering the truth like a 5-star chef serving filet mignon. The mayhem began. She once targeted Donald J. Trump, the most shameful spray tan scammer in the world. Even though Trump collected wives like limited edition baseball cards, he somehow managed to convince himself that he was the official arbiter of morality. She would not tolerate that hypocrisy. Rosie illuminated him like a broken tanning bed with the accuracy of a stand-up comedian and the ferocity of a woman who had just had enough. She made fun of his absurd hand motions because the man moves like a broken marionette. Let's face it. Donald Trump is in the news again because his show The Apprentice is starting again in January. He held a big press conference to see if he was going to allow Miss USA, such a prestigious title. In just a few minutes of pure comedy gold, Rosie transformed that tragic roadkill into a national joke with the ease of someone swatting a fly. Trump resembled a comb-over and defied both logic and gravity. Oh, he handled it with the maturity and grace of a toddler who has just been told they can't have McDonald's before bed. He threw a full-scale media tantrum, using such feeble playground comebacks like Fat Loser and a malfunctioning t-shirt cannon at a minor league baseball game on live television. The man was losing his mind over a comedian's jokes. Nothing says strong leader like losing your temper over a joke on television. His skin is so thin now that a stiff breeze might cause him to have an existential crisis over whether or not she would retain her crown. And then she started to cry, saying, "I just want to thank Donald for giving me a second chance." Brilliant. And there he is, hair looping, going, everyone, the second chance, and I'm going to give her a second chance for that. Your hair is perfect. Listen, he annoys me on a multitude of levels. He's the moral authority, left the first wife after an affair, left the second wife after an affair, had kids both times, but he's the moral compass for 20-year-olds in America? Dad'll sit and spin, my friends. I don't enjoy him. No one could have bothered her. He was doing all the heavy lifting, making himself look like a deranged lunatic with every unhinged rant, every caps lock-fueled Twitter meltdown, and every sweat-soaked, gibberish-filled interview where he somehow managed to work her name into the conversation. She was busy living her best life, completely unbothered, sipping on his tears, while Trump was out there throwing public hissy fits like a toddler who dropped his ice cream. He unwittingly became the Rosie O'Donnell publicity team's CEO, CFO, and unpaid intern. The man was really launching a full-fledged marketing campaign against Rosie and himself in his mind. She was simply relishing the free real estate, which included utilities and rent. He should have finished printing "I love Rosie" on a MAGA hat by this point. I'll say that if Trump gets indicted, it would be really great if Mueller lets you serve the papers. I feel like I've put in that request by tweet. Yeah, and the mere fact that Donald Trump was elected president was enough to make Rosie O'Donnell relax. Oh, reconsider, dear summer child. Rosie is here, the man who once hosted The Apprentice, whose greatest accomplishment was saying "you're fired" with all the dramatic flair of a 1920 silent film villain, was now in charge of the nation. And the woman who had been scolding Trump like a Thanksgiving turkey since before Twitter became his personal journal, Rosie had jokes, of course, and they were more incisive than the lines from Trump's spray tan. She observed everything, including his small, dubious doll-like hands, his difficulty speaking English, and his complete ignorance of how government operations were being carried out. Mainstream media, you're not doing your job, and you haven't since he came down that escalator. You haven't been doing your job. If you would have told the truth about him from the beginning and stood up to the lies that Mark Burnett sold America on The Apprentice, we wouldn't be in this position. But you normalized Trump, and that's what Time magazine did. Man of the Year, Donald Trump. Well, you Time magazine Trump. Oh. He responded in the most Trumpian way possible by starting a full-scale Twitter war and arbitrarily bringing up her name in a presidential debate after she pointed out that the man had the moral compass of a used car salesman at a dubious dealership and the attention span of a goldfish on Red Bull. The world was indeed watching. When asked about his lengthy and well-documented history of demeaning women, he chose to go on yet another optimistic tirade during his airtime, rather than responding like a responsible adult. Imagine having the opportunity to address important political issues on a global platform and concluding that your biggest adversary isn't Russia or actual global warming, but rather a comedian who offended you. Well, Rosie is a loser. Rosie's been a loser for a long time. Her magazine failed. She got sued. She folded up like a tent. It was too bad. Everything about Rosie, and I watch her and somebody sent me a clip of what she said. Rosie is somebody out of control who really just doesn't have it, and she ought to be careful because I'll send one of my friends to pick up her girlfriend. And I think if there's one thing more predictable than Donald Trump's victim complex, it's Rosie O'Donnell weaponizing his tantrums into comedy gold. The moment Trump so much as whispers her name, Rosie transforms into a one-woman demolition crew armed with Twitter fingers, a stand-up mic, and enough sarcasm to power 1,000 late-night monologues. And oh, does she deliver? She didn't just drag him, she reverse-bullied the bully, backing over his ego like a monster truck at a demolition derby, then peeling out for a victory lap just to savor the fumes of his meltdown. Late-night shows? She turned them into Trump roast extended cut interviews, instant clapback symposiums. Twitter? She treated it like her personal Olympic humiliation event, setting world records in the art of verbally flattening a man who once thought covfefe was a coherent thought. If sarcasm had a hall of fame, Rosie wouldn't just be in it, she'd own the building, the gift shop, and the overpriced concession stand. She famously joked about living rent-free in Trump's head, but at this point, she should be sending him a property tax bill for the luxury condo she occupies in his psyche. The man couldn't go 5 minutes without screaming about her, like she was the human embodiment of his credit score. The obsession was so intense, you'd think she was the one who ghosted him after a Celebrity Apprentice spin-off pitch meeting. And here's the beautiful part, Trump can't handle it. This is a guy who spends his days hurling playground insults like a kindergartner who just discovered Twitter. But the second Rosie fires back, full system malfunction. The irony of a man with a tan borrowed from a Doritos bag calling anyone a loser is almost too perfect. Meanwhile, Rosie just leans back, sips her tea, and watches him implode in real time, one whiny all-caps tweet at a time. The lesson: Trump built his brand on bullying, but Rosie proved he folds like a cheap suit the second someone matches his energy, and for that, we salute her. He'll do anything and everything to get what he wants, and women are of no value to him in his life. The only one who is, I think, is his daughter. That's it. The rest of the women in the world are useless, like the immigrants he says are coming from, Honduras to take us in caravans. Watch out for the caravan. They're people walking away from certain death in third world countries, right? The man doesn't care at all. So, what he did to Stormy Daniels was horrific. What he did to me was horrific. But I expected when that was happening, the National Organization for Women or something would come out and say, you can't do this. You're not just allowed to pick a woman, lie, and debase her. He sat there with impunity, but he is Rosie. O'Donnell witnessed the chaos firsthand as Trump stumbled his way into the White House, much like a reality TV contestant who unintentionally won the grand prize. She wasn't just observing, let's face it, she was delivering running commentary with a sharp edge. The days of making fun of his ridiculously small hands and his artificially colored cotton candy hair were long gone. Trump was unable to cope with the plethora of scandals, lies, and insane outbursts on Twitter that she now had to consume. From this vantage point, you'd think that being the head of the free world would keep one too busy to become fixated on a comedian. But not Trump. He sat there at 3 o'clock in the morning, frantically typing out tweets about Rosie, like some resentful high school ex who never recovered from being dumped. While other presidents were occupied with wars, economic crises, and their real duties, Trump was sitting there tweeting about a woman who hadn't even given him any thought in hours, but who, to be fair, had been correct about him for years. Rather than planning his approach to international affairs, it was a true marvel of incapacity in the modern age. Meanwhile, Rosie was living rent-free in his mind, casually tearing him apart on social media while he fumbled for playground insults that never quite worked. The most powerful man on the planet was out here subtweeting Rosie like a middle school kid who got roasted at lunch. Not to mention the irony, this was the guy who was always complaining about snowflakes, yet the very existence of Rosie O'Donnell sent him into a Twitter frenzy. The man believed he could manage a nation, but he could hardly handle a powerful woman with a microphone. As a spoiler, he was unable to handle the situation. He went on to say that there was no safety in his house, and all of that came up when he first announced his candidacy. Rosie was laughing at the absurdity. Trump had essentially given Rosie a comedy goldmine on a silver platter, and she was only now warming up. In some ways, the man was less self-aware than a late-night talk show monologue. He couldn't take a joke, yet he gave them out freely. The man's skin was as thin as a marshmallow in the microwave, but Rosie, on the other hand, was enjoying herself immensely. She compared Trump to an expired can of spray tan stuffed into a suit that was 2 sizes too big and continued to insult him like a hot-headed stand-up comedian. Best of all, he continued to prove her correct. With each outburst, incoherent Twitter tirade, and rant about fake news, Trump became an even bigger joke. Rosie kept reminding the world that no matter how much money he inherited or how many gold toilets he owned, Trump would always be that desperate guy screaming for attention like a washed-up reality star who doesn't believe his season ended. At this point, Trump was still acting like a cartoon villain after being evicted from the White House, and it was like watching an old man argue with his reflection. However, Rosie and the rest of the world will always have something to laugh at as long as he continues to make a fool of himself. He is a cruel, criminal, and mentally unstable man, and Duty to Warn was a book that came out when he was first in office. Psychiatrists across the country, who don't typically diagnose people they haven't personally served, came together and published a book called Duty to Warn to tell the world what a narcissistic, mentally ill person he is. Rosie believes he is the worst thing that ever happened to the United States. His cruelty knows no bounds, and when he is upset, humiliated, or embarrassed, he has no control and goes into a rage. He is the kind of person who is a grifter and is also tied to the evangelical movement.